So hello from Green-Mopeds in Southwest London. So today we're going to be comparing the Segway E110s with the Yadea G5 and the Horwin EK1. They're all pretty much in the same sort of ballpark in terms of size and roughly price. So what we'll do is, as we usually do, we'll go around the bikes, give you some information about them, and hopefully that'll help you make an informed decision. So let's get to it. Okay, so just to cover off the Segway. Segway is actually now known as Segway Ninebot, and that is a merger of Segway from the stand-up balancing two-wheeler electric platforms and Ninebot out of China. Many products in their range, all electric based, e-scooters, balancing things, trikes, go-karts, and this is one of their first mopeds. Okay, so the reason we put these three together is sort of one really to do with size. So this is becoming sort of like the standard size for a moped. You can actually see one in the background behind the TC Max over there, which is from the Emoco company, or Lueng, called the LX05. That's also about this size. But these are sort of like the typical bikes that people are looking at if they want a 50cc equivalent bike. Okay, so we'll go around them, but we'll start at the front as we're here. As you see, the design on the Segway is fairly wide at the front, which gives you obviously good protection, fairly straight in its lines, but it's a nice design, I have to say. I do quite like it. And then you've got the Yadea and more sort of curvy on the EK1. In terms of lights, a couple of things to say about that. So you obviously have choices of where you put your lights and indicators. So on the Yadea, they've got the main front light pointing forward. So if you're turning into a corner, the light would still be pointing forward, and you're relying on the sort of wideness of the beam to deal with turning into a corner. And then they put the indicators on the handlebars. Okay, so if you think about that, if you're sort of down here or quite a way away, if you try and see that the right-hand indicator is a little bit hidden behind the actual body of the bike. So if you were sitting at a junction and turning right, you would be reliant on your driver, you know, the lower down they are, is less likely to see that indicator. Whereas on the Segway and the EK1, the indicator is here on the Segway, and it's this one on the EK1, it changes colour. Okay, so they've left the indicators facing forward, and then on the EK1, they've put the head beam pointing where the bike is going to be going, which some people say is obviously a better option, because you're making sure that wherever you're turning, you've got light. Okay, whereas on the Segway and Yadea, they are facing forward. Okay, on the wheels, we've got a larger front wheel on the EK1 at the front versus back. Okay, so as you can see down here, 1480s. Okay, so 14 at the front. And these ones, they are 12s. Okay, so not good or bad. Often people say that having larger front wheels is good for going over potholes and things like that, but that's just the choice they made. Just as an aside, an NIU MQI Plus, for example, is even smaller. It's a 10-inch. So, and people ride that all the time. So, not necessarily good or bad, but just different. Okay. So here you go on the EK1. You've got a single front disc brake. By single, I mean it's not CBS or anything like that. And the same on these two. Okay, so ventilated discs, 12-inch wheels. Okay, and then the design is sort of, you know, up to how you like it. I quite like the design of the Segway, and well, in fact, all three of them are nice in certain ways. Okay. If we talk about other sort of dimensions, then you'll see some of the more obvious differences. So this is looking down the seats. Okay, and as you can see, the Segway has a massive seat. Okay, it's longer than both of them. It's also flat, so obviously that means that you can sit where you wish. Okay, the G5 does have a flat seat as well, but obviously not as big. You know, you can see down the front here that there's more of it lengthwise. the fact that it's flat gives you the advantage of sitting where you want. So that is obviously a good thing. If you look around the back, again, I quite like the design of the EK1 with this sort of light. Segway gives you quite a large grab rail here to sit on. And then I guess one of the advantages of a G5 is the seat pad. Okay, but of course you could put a top box with a pad on it and you would achieve the same thing. Okay, there is a rack available for the EK1, there's a rack coming for the Segway, and there is one already available for the EK1, sorry, G5 I should call that. Okay, so that large seat brings around a few other advantages. This is the storage that you get under the G5, and obviously the reason for that is that you've got a 60-volt battery under the floor here. Okay, on the Segway, this is what you get under the seat. So these are two open face helmets. Okay, so the storage, you can't beat it. Okay, and that's because the battery is under the floor. Okay, so this is in terms of size, again, if you look across them, this has got the largest foot space. So if you've got big feet, this might be the one for you. The way you get to the battery is by lifting this here, which is quite an easy process other than doing it with one hand. Okay, so and there you go, and that is a 48-volt battery. So this is where some of the other differences come. Okay, just to finish off, so this is the space you get under an EK1. So that's enough space for an open face helmet in there as well. Okay, so let's talk about batteries as we're here. The EK1 comes with two choices of battery: 72 volt 40 amp hour or 72 volt 26 amp hour. Okay, do the maths on that and you get 2.8 kilowatts on the 40 volt 40 amp hour. This one is 60 volt 30 amp hour, so that's about 1.8 kilowatt hours. Okay, so a kilowatt hour less than an EK1, and the one under there is 48 volt by 30, so that's 1.4 kilowatt hours. Okay, so in other words, the EK1 with the 72 volt battery has twice the energy as the Segway, and not quite as much, 1.8 to 2.8, so about 60% of the G5. Okay, so what that obviously means is range. Okay, so we're actually conducting some range tests for someone at the moment, but I'm pretty confident that the EK1 will do 55 miles, 50 to 55 miles, let's say. Okay, Segway have gone down an official testing route called WMTC, which is like an official body for testing motorcycle testing criteria, and they say that the range on with WTC is 45 kilometers, which is 30 miles, or just under 30 miles. So that's the official range. What you'll get in practice is likely to be less, actually. So that's going to be more like, and you can see why, because 1.4 to 2.8 is twice, you're more likely to get 25 miles out of this bike. Okay, and on the G5, you're likely to get more like 30 miles. Okay, so if it's range that's your requirement, and again, this is with the 40 amp hour battery, if it's range that's your requirement, then it would be the EK1, but there is a price associated with going down this route. Okay, if it's storage, you would certainly go for the Segway, because it's, as you saw, it's got the ability to hold two full face helmets. If you can compromise on storage, then both the G5 and the EK1 are pretty comparable. Okay, so now we're down here. So let's talk about this. So this G5 has a 2.3 kilowatt maximum power motor. Okay, their own. Okay, This one, so that's maximum. 1.8 is the 1.8 kilowatts is the nominal power, which is where you you use statistics like that to normalize the rating. So 1.8 nominal, 2.3 max. This one is 1.5 nominal and unknown max. Can't find the details. I'm waiting to get the official answer, but it's going to be probably 2 kilowatts or less. And this one is 2.8 max. I think it's 2.3 nominal. Okay, so what that means is you have to think about power and battery input to deal with things like acceleration, going up hills, etc., etc. How easy it is to get to your top speed, which is 28 miles an hour on all these bikes. So it's clear from this that the Segway is the least powerful at 2 horsepower nominal. The EK1 is the most powerful, and then the G5 is somewhere in between. Okay. It's also clear that from a range perspective, just by doing the maths, the EK1 is will have the most capacity and therefore the most range. At 2.8 kilowatt hours, the Segway is half that, 1.4 kilowatt hours, and the G5 is again somewhere in the middle. Okay, so let's look at the dashboard. So fairly nicely laid out. You've got your miles, state of charge, speed, and then consumption, and you literally just twist and go. Okay, on the Segway, it's a bit of a different story. Well, as in terms of a demonstration, that is. You can start it through the fob, you can start it through the key, you can start it through the app, etc., etc. Okay, and then you have your modes here. I would suggest you won't be using mode 1, possibly not even mode 2. But you've got your state of charge here, so 10 segments. Mode is pretty sparse, I guess, but that's fine, time, etc., etc. This light here changes based upon what you're doing with regen. Okay, so unlike the EK1 that changes colour for speed acceleration, okay, so the faster the speed, the more colour you get. This one, you get different colours based upon what you're doing with regen. So basically, this will go blue when you're moving, and this will go green when you're doing regen. One of the most interesting things about this bike is it's got adjustable regen through the app. Okay, so you can turn it off completely, the regen that is, and in that case it will just cruise to a halt in its own time, and it will only do regen if you squeeze the brake. Okay, and you'll see that go green when you squeeze the brake. But then it's got 2 passive regen settings through the app, and what that is sort of like a hard regen and then a sort of medium regen, and that is passive. So it will do this, it will slow you down just by letting go of the throttle. Okay, and it is quite aggressive. If you see our ride review, you'll see me showing that. Okay, and it's set through the app. Okay, so there's no other bike that we do or that I know in this sort of class that has that sort of capability. Okay, that you can turn on and off regen. An Ascol allows you to turn on and off passive regen, but it's not adjustable. I mean, you hear of or you see adjustable regen on zeros and things like that, but in this sort of class of bike, this is pretty much a first, I would say. Okay, so yeah, you do the normal stuff. Here you can see you can get into the under the seat, and you've got your cubby hole. There's a little USB port down there. Lights, indicators, which do make a little bit of a noise. Again, through the app you can adjust warning tones and volume of warning and all that sort of stuff. So there is an awful lot in the app, more than you even get out of NIU, which is saying something. Okay, so and then we've talked about the rear seat and everything like that. Okay, so on the G5, again a little bit different, quite a big clear display on the G5. Okay, so it's turned on in parking mode. You press the mode button to take it out of parking. Okay, and then off you go. Only 2 modes in this one. Okay, as I said, on many bikes you never use the mode 1. It's 12 miles an hour, actually dangerous on the roads. Okay, so up here, which you can't see on the Segway, here's you've got your brake fluid levels, so that's one thing that you have to do for maintenance. Okay, you don't see those either on the EK1. Okay, so in terms of price, this is where again there's slight differences. So the G5 at the end there, so 2.3 kilowatts, 60 volt, 30 amp hours, that is 2029. The Segway is 2599, so 1.5 kilowatts, 1.4 kilowatt hours, 48 volt based, 2599. And then you've got the Horwin with either the 26 or the 40 amp hour. Most people buy the 40 amp hour. That is over 3000. Okay, but 72 volt, 40 amp hour, 2.8 kilowatt hours. Okay, so quite a difference. It's just reminded me to talk about charging times. One thing that Segway have done is done quite well on the charging. So here you see it's an 8 amp charger. Okay, the Horwin actually does happen to have a 10 amp charger, but that's fairly good. On the G5 it's only 4 amp. So the simple way to look at your charging is if you do a comparison. If you have a 4 amp charger like you do in the G5, charging time is going to be 6 to 7 hours. Okay, obviously this depends upon the size of the battery. If you've got a 2.8 kilowatt hour battery, it's obviously going to take longer than a 1.8 kilowatt hour battery. But if all things were equal, if you had a 4 amp charger on that bike, it would charge in 6 odd hours. Okay, as the Segway's got an 8 amp, if you put that 8 amp charger onto the G5, it would halve the charging time. It's basically as simple as that. Double the amps out of the charger, you halve the charging time. Okay, so subsequently the charging time on the Segway, albeit with only a 1.4 kilowatt hour battery, is 3 hours. So again, charging time might be a consideration, and therefore it will be the quickest. The fact that even though an EK1 has a higher rated amps on their charger, because the capacity of the battery is twice as much as on the Segway, there you can see why you're back up to 6 hours. Okay, so hopefully that's clear. Okay, in terms of colours, there are on the EK1 there is white, this blue, Sainsbury's orange as I call it, and it is pretty much like the orange you see on Sainsbury's, and a matte black. On this one, assuming that all the colours that are listed come over, there are 5 colours. I have to say I quite like the silver grey that they've got here. And then on the G5 there's these 2 matte colours, which is this matte black and a matte grey. Okay. All right, so they're all on the grant, or all will be. Segway's still going through that process. So that will give you the 3-year warranty on the battery and the 2-year warranty on the bike. Okay, available, they are en route, so available shortly. Okay, so I guess in summary, if storage is your thing, then the Segway wins hands down. If clever technology, like an app that does all sorts of stuff, including programmable regen, then again the Segway is your thing. Bearing in mind there isn't an app at all on the EK1, and there is an app coming or improving on the G5. At the moment it's still a convoluted process to get it working, if at all. Okay, so from a clever tech perspective, again it's the Segway. So storage and clever. Range is clearly the EK1 with up to 100 miles on 2 batteries. Price is clearly the Yadea G5 as 2029. So I hope you found that useful. Please feel free to contact us if you feel the need. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and thanks very much.